up guys, and welcome back to MoAn Inc. If you guys are new here, then hello. My name is Erica, and for today's video, as you can see from the title, we are going to be chatting about all things Christopher Nolan's Odyssey. But before we can get into that, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so that you know every single time I post in the future. And now that you've so kindly done that, let's get into the video. So let's just start off by saying that this video has been filmed in February of 2026. That's important because at the moment, the only information that we have about Christopher Nolan's Odyssey is the trailer. We'll be watching that together in just a second. So if you're watching this after the film comes out, be aware that the things that I'm saying right now could change. I'm very hyper aware of that. This is why it took so long for me to actually do a response to this trailer, because not a lot of information is given to us in the trailer. And I didn't want to come on and have many opinions that then when I watch the film in July, I'm then like, oh, all of that was either explained away or is not actually relevant to the film at hand. Along with that, I do think it's important to note that I am a classicist. So literally what I am trained to do at university level is to read the ancient languages and tell you what is in them. So when it comes to this side of things, I am going to be talking purely from a text-based knowledge. I am not really going to be sitting here and talking about all of the archaeology stuff. I'm just going to explain my opinion. I am qualified to do so. New York University at least has said that I'm qualified to do so. And I've even written my own book, which is coming out this summer, called The Odyssey Effect: How Homer's Epic Poem Shaped the World. So you're in good hands, is what I'm saying. You're in good hands. I'm not going to repeat anything that you've already heard online, hopefully. And with that being said, let's just roll the trailer. Okay, we are 23 seconds in, and this is the shot. This one screen grab seems to have set the internet on fire. I mean, truly, I have seen everybody and their mums and their dogs have an opinion about the helmets that are being used in this. Now, just for a little bit of context, I'm not going to go too much into the Odyssey because I have a bajillion videos on this channel, and that is used as a legitimate unit of measurement here. I have a bajillion videos discussing Homer, the wider context, all of that kind of stuff. But what you need to know is that Homer is writing the Odyssey in the 8th century BC or BCE, and the story is actually set in the Bronze Age. So we date it to about 1200 or 1100 BC. These dates have actually been written down, so by people much later, but still. So Eratosthenes, I always struggle with this guy's name, he dates it to the late 1100s BC, and other people have dated to around 1200 BC. So that's sort of what we're looking at, that when Homer is writing, he's writing a story of the distant past. He, she, they, it. I also have a video discussing the questions that we have surrounding Homer's identity, not the point of this video. But it is important for you guys to know, Homer is writing and Homer is delivering this story to an audience of people that were not the contemporary audience of the story. So with that being said, it is important then that we look at this through the lens of both of those time periods. And that is the point for the entire Odyssey and the entire Iliad. There are always moments where Homer is speaking to his current, he, she, they, it, them, probably the best one. They are always looking for room to talk to their current audience as well as speaking about an older part of their history. This means that for me, talking about the historical accuracy of the helmets when you actually get into the text, which we're going to be doing, is not necessarily all that relevant. It's a good framework to use, but it's not what we should be using 100% in order to make armor, in order to set these things in the right setting, because Homer themselves has really interesting choices when it comes to the armor of these characters. So that's what we're going to be doing. I don't think I've ever done this on the channel before, where I've actually gone into the ancient Greek with you guys, got into the languages. I'm mostly working from translation, but it's really important that we add more to the conversation here. And looking at both of these characters, Agamemnon and Odysseus, their armor is explicitly described in the Iliad. So let's hope that this extra camera, you guys can actually see what I'm looking at here. But we're going to start with book 10, because this will show Odysseus's armor. Here, as you can see, he has this red plumed helmet. When we turn to the actual text, though, we need to use the Iliad as opposed to the Odyssey, because the Odyssey does not give us a lot of descriptions of the armor. The Iliad, because it is our quote-unquote war book, I don't really like saying that anymore, but I frequently do say that because it distinguishes the two of them from each other. This is where we get a lot of the battle descriptions and a lot of these iconic moments, scenes, costumes, all of that is really described to us in the Iliad. Some are described in the Odyssey, but since they work together, we get a lot of that here. As you can see, I have just the ancient Greek on the page. This first paragraph is actually kind of irrelevant to us because this is about the son of Tydeus. But the second part is where we get Odysseus's armor. So this little section is really where we hear about what Odysseus is wearing. This is beginning with Meriones, who is another character in the Iliad. You don't need to know who that is unless you want to read the Iliad. But Meriones gives Odysseus his armor. So he gives him, take out my highlighter. He gives him this and this. So this top word up here just means quiver. Oh my God, now my handwriting is choosing to be very questionable. I feel the pressure of the camera. So this is a quiver and this is a sword. So those are the first things that we see being given. So we know that these are two of his weapons. Now, this is the word that is important for us because when we get into the description of the helmet, it's not only this word up here, but it's also these two words as well. Now, this word, this first word that I highlighted, is the ancient Greek word for leather. Now, Homeric Greek, this is just a side note, but it is notoriously quite difficult to translate because it is not just ancient Greek. It is an amalgamation of a lot of different dialects. So that's why it tends to take a lot for you to kind of like unpack it a bit. And so this word, if you were to translate it like literally, it doesn't necessarily say leather, it says dog skin, which is what they would have used to describe leather. Okay, so we know that Odysseus is armed with a quiver, a sword, and a helmet that is made of leather. Now, it is not just a leather helmet, but these two words tell us this is kind of a like tooth. I should have translated this off camera and then just come to you guys with the translation instead of being like, I'll just translate it on camera. How silly of me. So this just kind of means tooth. And this is the important word, which means like tusked. So it's like white tusk. So it's a tooth. It's like a white tusk sort of layered on the outside of the helmet, right? And so it is all held together then with, you know, wool and felt, basically. So what this is referring to is this really iconic boar tusk helmet that we do have. So archaeologically, this is what I say when like I like archaeology insofar as it matches up with things that I've read. We do have depictions of a boar tusk helmet that would have been from the Bronze Age. This is a very, very traditional helmet. This is something that would have been seen as really foreign to Homer's contemporary audience. I do just want to highlight that, right? So this is very much of the time period of the Bronze Age. It is this really distinct, it has a really distinct look even. And Odysseus is, I'm pretty sure, I haven't got into the ancient Greek of the entire Iliad in like 2 or 3 years. 2 years? 2 years, I think. So I need a refresh basically, but I'm pretty sure that when it comes to people who are described with this helmet, Odysseus is the main one who's described with this helmet. So it is quite important that he has that because that is our literary example of this physical helmet that we have, these artistic depictions of this helmet that we have being used. So looking at Odysseus' helmet here, it is obviously not the boar tusk helmet. Do I think that Odysseus needs the boar tusk helmet though? No. And the reason is because when you actually understand what's going on in the Iliad with the armies, it would be very, very difficult to depict that on screen. And this comes through in the armor because every single part of the Greek army, and I use inverted commas for this because there was no such thing as a united Greece in the ancient world, in particular in the world that we're looking at. And therefore, all of the armies would have been dressed completely differently. So Achilles' army is dressed differently to Odysseus' army. They're dressed differently to Agamemnon's army. There is no united conversation about what everybody's going to wear and how they're going to show up and how they're going to show that they're a united. Like, that just doesn't happen. So it's important for the text to do that. But this is such a technical point that I understand in a different medium, that's not gonna work. You know, it works when we are literature nerds and we can kind of keep track of everybody and we're aware of this, but on screen, for somebody who doesn't know that, who's not familiar, to sit in the cinema and try to keep track of who's Greek and who's Trojan and who's on the same side, if they are all dressed differently, is going to be mayhem. So I did want to acknowledge that the helmet is vastly different from what we get in the Iliad for Odysseus' helmet, but it does show that they are somewhat on the same side, right? I think that that's what Christopher Nolan was clearly trying to do, is trying to just be like, look, we're just gonna smooth it all out, make them all look like one army, which they were in the ancient world, but they weren't like one happy family with one, you know, designer for all of their for all of their clothing. Now, when it comes to Agamemnon's armor, we need to fast forward to book 11. And in book 11 of the Iliad, we get a really wonderful description of Agamemnon's armor. And I have never, ever, ever, ever seen anyone do this. If I am wrong, if you guys have watched a rendition of whether it be this story or just Greek mythology in general that has this armor, please let me know, because I haven't seen it. Because we get a very, very long description of what Agamemnon looks like all kitted out in his armor. And it is so different from Odysseus' armor, but it's also incredibly different from this Batman kind of helmet thing. First things first, we have greaves that are described as silver, so, you know, like shin guards. That's kind of what a greave is, right? It goes on your leg. So we first of all have that description, they're silver, right? So automatically, right out the gate, very different from Odysseus' armor, where we are told that it is boar tusk, it's much more traditional. So we can assume that the rest of his armor is also going to be just as traditional. Agamemnon's is shiny, okay? In fact, that is used in the first part. It's like those first two sentences, the first two lines even that you can see, it's described that Agamemnon is also putting on his flashing armor. And right out the gate, we know that his greaves are silver. And right beneath that, we are then given a description of his corslet. So the third word that I highlighted there is the ancient Greek, well, the Homeric Greek word for corslet. Then this part, so just this, is basically a description of like the history of this corslet, like where he got it from. This is very normal for Homer. Homer loves to contextualize all of these things for us, like where did you get it from? Who is it from? What's the story behind it? We also get this with people, we get this with objects. So that's just what this part is, essentially. Now, underneath that is where we really start getting the description of what is on specifically this corslet before we move into the shield. So first thing, please pen, don't move. Fabulous. So first things first, we have 10, and then this word kind of means like a swoop or a stripe kind of a thing, I'm gonna say swoop. That's a really bad translation. This is why I'm not a linguist. This is why I don't do translations myself. I can read it, but my vocab choices are questionable. So we've got 10 swoops, and these two words basically mean like a black and a blue-black enamel. So we have these stripes of blue-black, black enamel that are going through, 10 of them, right, that are going through this corslet, along with dodeca, which means 12, gold stripes, and then 20 tin stripes, okay? So just bear in mind how flashy already this is, right? So when you have the greaves coupled with this corslet, before we get to the details of the corslet, it's like, look at me, I am the most important person, look how glorious and beautiful this is, kind of a thing, because it's just flashback. Even like the deep colors, those like rich, deep blue, black colors are directly standing out against these much brighter metals that are being used on his armor, guys. So like he's going out into battle with this like coming off of this like aura of just like, look at me, coming off of him. Continuing on though, we see that there are 3 snakes. Can you tell I'm doing this on camera? How well am I editing it? But there are 3 snakes, and these 3 snakes are going up in the direction of Agamemnon's neck. So that's kind of, they're sort of twirling up through this in the shape of rainbows. So, you know how I mentioned that there are like swoops underneath it? So the idea is that it's sort of like this weaving of all of these different colors and metals and those sorts of things. And then because the snakes are like, they're sort of like this is how I've always imagined them. Not this bottom part of my arms, but like this part where they're kind of coming up and then they're showing up right, like the heads are right underneath his neck and they come all the way up his corslet. So already that is an extremely extravagant corslet, but we are not done with what Agamemnon's armor looks like, because as we fast forward down like 2 lines pretty much, we start being told that he has a sword. That's the same word that we saw with Odysseus. So he has a sword and it's sort of like thrown across his shoulders. So not the actual sword, but like he kind of goes whoop This is my description of putting on a sword. So he's got this sword going over him that is laid with these golden studs along it. So the sword itself is decorated. However, the sheath of the sword, like the container of the sword, isn't gold. So the sword itself has gold studs on it, but the sheath, as we can see, is silver, but has these gold, it has these like gold details on it. Oh my goodness, I should have translated this off camera. So it has like these gold details on the scabbard, okay, on the sheath. So you've got, again, lots of shiny things. If Agamemnon was in an area where there were magpies, he'd be fucked, is what I'm trying to tell you. Like, this Agamemnon for Christopher Nolan's film would have been much, much safer. Homer's Agamemnon would have just been a feast for all of the birds. But going down to my favorite detail from all of this is suddenly when we get to Agamemnon's shield. The shield is adorned with 10 rings of bronze, right? So as you have this like circular shield, it has 10 rings of bronze. And when we get to the center of this shield is really where the interesting stuff starts happening, because it has a gorgon in the middle of it. Now, this gorgon face in the middle is described as being like really, it's grim looking, and it has these fierce eyes as well coming out of it. So this is like a kind of moment. But along with that, on either side of the gorgon, we have Deimos and Phobos. So Deimos and Phobos are two of Ares' minions, and they are really famous for going into battle with him. So although Ares is the god of like active war, he has these two minions that kind of sprinkle their power over the battlefield as well. So Deimos and Phobos are like terror and fear, and that's really what they are throwing over the people. That's why you have the emotions that you do in active war, because of them. So the idea that on Agamemnon's shield, he not only has a gorgon, he also has these two on either side of said gorgon is so insane. I mean, I see so many depictions of Achilles' shield. I see no one talking about Agamemnon's shield, and I'm like, someone draw this thing. It is beautiful, objectively beautiful. Now, to top it all off, because we are not done with this shield, that actually, as you can see below it, unless you can't read Greek, then you can't see below it. But either way, when you look beneath this, it does describe how the actual strap of the shield also has a snake curling around it. So the strap is made of silver, that's what that means. And the snake itself, which is coiled around it, is again this dark blue, midnight, you know, blue-black enamel color. And the snake, even though that word looks like dragon, we normally don't translate it as dragon, but if you do see any translators use dragon, they just mean serpent. So the snake has 3 heads, but they are all from the same body. So the strap of silver is then having this other snake that matches his breastplate curling around it. It's one body with 3 different heads coming off of it, right? In this really stark, contrasting color. And right at the bottom is where we get the description of Agamemnon's helmet. Interestingly though, this helmet is horse-tailed. So we do get the description of a plumed helmet in the Iliad that Agamemnon is wearing, and it's described as being like very frightening and foreboding with this design on it. I mean, it just has the plume, but sort of matched everything together. It's this incredibly out there piece of armor. So I did want to describe that, because even though the color of Christopher Nolan's choice for the armor is, I guess, you know, you could be really nice and say, okay, well, he saw that there was some blue-black enamel that's involved and he wanted to really harp on that. I'm not saying that he didn't do that. I have no idea what he didn't do. But as we can see, the design, you know, the cape and the thing, it's giving much more what he thinks the audience wants to see rather than what I want to see, which is Agamemnon decked out in this ludicrous armor. So this is just in there to kind of inflate Agamemnon, right? And this is a big part of the discussion, like I've been saying, that it's not historically, Homer's not historically accurate always to the Bronze Age. So we do have some wiggle room with the ancient Greek from what we could do on screen. And to be fair to Christopher Nolan, Agamemnon does have a plumed helmet. Okay, I do want to give credit where I think credit is due. There is a plume on Agamemnon's helmet. There is not one on Odysseus' helmet. But as I said, I think trying to align them as one army, so giving them a color scheme, giving them a uniform, so to speak, makes more sense in this medium, as opposed to giving Odysseus what I presume a modern viewer, a modern reader might assume be like a lesser helmet, because it won't look as grand, it won't look as big. It's not a lesser helmet, but I understand how other people would see that, because it doesn't have the big plume. It won't have, you know, all of the intricacies that Agamemnon's armor has. You know, that kind of a stuff. I understand that maybe the boar's tusk helmet will not translate on camera. Now, in saying all of that, there is a really weird, I mean, there are a couple of weird elements to the armor anyways, and one that people have pointed out, which I just aesthetically don't like, is the like cheekbones that are put in on Agamemnon's helmet. Like, I don't know why the cheekbones were necessary. I feel like that's just like Hollywood, Ozempic, you know, it's like this weird thing that like nobody can have a round face anymore. Everybody needs to have an angular face. As somebody with a round face, I'm like, I think we all need to chill. And I feel like this is just, you know, a looks-maxing ancient Greek helmet that's like totally not necessary. And I think that one of my colleagues, I guess you can call them colleagues because we all work online and we all know each other, Cinzia, who does Lady of the Library, she made a really good point that this kind of looks like handsome Squidward, and I actually completely agree with her.
And why it's pristine, and why it has Chad cheekbones carved into the helmet that makes it look like handsome Squidward is cosplaying Greek Batman.
I'm again not shitting on it for being like modern armor or anything, it's just the cheekbones. I'm like, could we not shave those down? Were those necessary? I don't know. But now that we've taken a nice detour, let's keep watching.
After years of war,
You see, so they all have plumes on their helmets. And I think there's another one of my colleagues called Ten, who's Dirt Diaries, and she did a really good short, I'll play that short for you guys now, where she explained plumes, that it's not that there are no plumes from the Bronze Age, because there are plumes, we just read one, but also it's more so the fact that there are different kinds of plumes that probably they would have had in the Bronze Age. Do I think that Christopher Nolan needed to take these? No. Do I think it's a very interesting point of discussion at the moment though? Yeah, for sure, we should absolutely throw it in there, that I personally don't have a problem with the plumes. I do think it's important for us to use this as an educational tool to understand what probably the plumes would have looked like. So take it away, 10.
Homer sets the Iliad in the Odyssey at the very end of the late Bronze Age. So time-wise, we are looking at the late 13th and early 12th centuries BCE. Now this is 15th century BCE. This vase is also from Mycenae, but dates to about 1200 BCE. So same time period as this. Oh, well, they're stylistic choices. These helmet types and these plumes are a siren song for every director. And we have plumes from Bronze Age Greece. We know people are wearing different types of helmets with different types of plumes. Combat narratives have already formed. Boar's tusk helmet with a beautiful plume. Another helmet with a beautiful spiral design with a curved plume. Battle Glen signet ring. 2 boar's tusk helmets with plumes. Boar's tusk helmet with a plume. Boar's tusk, plume. Stylized boar's tusk, stylized boar's tusk. Now, this last image comes from the Palace of Nestor. It is dated roughly to 1200 BCE. So we're seeing really great comparative evidence within the corpus of combat imagery. And the Dendra Panoply, which is 15th century BCE, is the best full armor that we do have from this period. And we know from testing was suitable for combat. So while a Greek is clearly fighting an enemy right here, you know what would be cooler is if we had historically accurate plumes.
And now that we're back, let's keep going.
not even me.
So this is the Trojan horse that everybody has also had a massive opinion on. Again, we haven't seen enough of it, I'll be completely honest. My opinions of the Trojan horse might change when we watch the film. I do have to say that through seeing this Trojan horse, it is a little perfect. And that's not me saying it as a compliment. I mean, how in the world would the ancient people of this story, again, if we're just thinking fictionally, how would they have made something that was all sanded down and perfect when they're in like a war camp? You know, that's just something where you're like, logically, that doesn't really make any sense. It might be explained. when we fast forward to July and they're talking about the scene, maybe they'd have like a master craft woodworker there, I don't know, who's working on this for like a year or two, for all I know. I'm totally open for things to be proved wrong. Yeah. This I'm excited for, because I think this is the underworld, and I think if it is, again, we only have like the random shot, this is exactly what happens in the ancient text. And so if that's the case, then that is directly from the book. On the plus side, that would be copy and paste. Again, I haven't seen it, but from the trailer, I'm excited.
Promise me you will come back.
What if I can't?
That's it. That's all that we're given from the Odyssey trailer. I hope that you enjoyed the ancient Greek side of things. I hope that you enjoyed actually like diving into this and looking at it a little bit more. Maybe understanding the text will kind of help you, you know, arm yourselves, not necessarily to be defensive when the film comes out, but just to have more fun facts at gatherings with friends or screenings with friends, whatever that happens to be. So on that note, I'm gonna love you and leave you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll be seeing you next time with more videos here on MoAn Inc. I'll see you guys then.